A boy appears in the virtual reality game Fantasy Defense. He is the youngest son of a prestigious swordsman family, and his name is Celterion Marquis. Celterion is one of the characters from his family involved in major early game events. However, during an event involving the main protagonist, he is badly beaten and dies pitifully after being struck down by a minion summoned by a villain, killed in a single blow, and everyone assumes he was just an insignificant extra. And that character, whose story is told above, is our boy. Our boy looks into the mirror, smiles awkwardly, and pinches his cheeks, wincing in pain. He's testing to see if he's dreaming, but since it hurts, he realizes this is all too real. He places his hands on the mirror, struggling to understand how he ended up inside a virtual reality game. Our boy, Lee Hyun-woo, cries in disbelief. He can't accept that he, who once ranked first in the world for fantasy defense, has now become this worthless character. Fantasy Defense, the virtual reality game that will take the world by storm in 2030, has completely turned his life upside down. The game had such a devilish level of difficulty that no one had cleared it, even after 10 years. However, this very challenge and the game's addictive nature kept it popular. Players earn points in the global rankings based on how they play and complete quests, with rare quests and items significantly boosting their scores. Our boy says that's why, for 10 years in real life, he had been completely immersed in fantasy defense. After mastering everything, from rare magic circles to legendary crafting combinations, he achieved an overwhelming score. He was truly a living legend of the game, the top-ranked global player, Lee Hyun-woo. Our boy sighs as he reflects on his current situation, realizing that he's now inhabiting the body of an ordinary character. He wonders how he will survive in this world, especially since even the main protagonist, with the best talents, couldn't clear the game. As he sits idly on his bed, he recalls Celterion's fate, a character whose story he knows all too well from playing the game countless times. Our boy then explains that the ultimate goal in fantasy defense is to stop the forces of darkness. The one who summoned these dark forces was the second son of the Celterion family, Adol. In an attempt to usurp the head of the family, Adol sought the power of darkness to incite a rebellion. As a result, the Celterion territory became a base for the dark forces who had long coveted human lands. In the ensuing chaos, the incompetent and powerless Celterion, our boy, ran into the territory and was killed by a villain. Now, in the present, our boy sighs with regret, realizing that he could have simply left the territory before the rebellion began. However, he recognizes a bigger issue. This character has a disease called Hermumu. Our boy grows sad as he looks at his hand, and we learn that Hermumu is a condition in which the mana channels within the body are blocked. In this game world, mana is the source of both aura and magic, as well as the essential energy needed for survival. Those with blocked mana channels, known as Hermumu patients, cannot absorb the nutrients required for life and growth, and most die before reaching the age of 20. Our boy looks at his hands, reflecting on the fact that the only cure for Hermumu is to absorb mana from nature into the body. However, since the mana channels are blocked, absorbing mana is impossible. In other words, being diagnosed with Hermumu is essentially a death sentence. Celterion, diagnosed at a young age, fell into deep despair. After his diagnosis, Cal was consumed by fear of death, anxiety over his remaining time, and frustration at being unable to fight back. As these thoughts overwhelm him, sweat streams down his face. Eventually, Cal became twisted, and before long, he was regarded as a disgrace to the family. His father instructed him to stay in his room and reflect on his actions. Isolated and gloomy, Cal was ultimately confined to an annex by his father, the head of the Celterion family. Sitting in his room, Cal cries in anger, questioning whether his family sees him as a joke. He feels deeply humiliated, believing they all look down on him. Enraged, Cal throws a chair at the door and screams, wishing they would all just die. His eyes burn with terror, making him appear fierce and desperate. Our boy remains silent, reflecting on all these scenes, thinking that Kyle is beyond hope. He admits that even in the game, he felt Kyle was a lost cause, so rotten that even his terminal illness doesn't evoke any sympathy. Our boy tells us to reassess the situation. The character he's possessed, Kyle Celterion, is the youngest son of a Marquis, but the family is doomed. Kyle has no talent in swordsmanship or magic, and his life expectancy is severely limited due to his illness. He has a terrible personality, a ruined reputation, and has been confined by the family head. Our boy feels hopeless, realizing that he's trapped in a no-win situation. Whether he stays or runs, death seems inevitable. Desperate, he screams in frustration, unable to fathom how he can survive in this world with such terrible stats. He thinks to himself that it's normal for someone to get some sort of cheat ability when they're reincarnated, and he desperately wishes for a status window or something similar as he cries. Suddenly, our boy is shocked to see blue-colored bubbles appearing in his room. Curious, he looks at them, wondering what they are, and reaches out to touch one of the bubbles. Our boy thinks to himself that he has never encountered anything like this before. As he touches the bubble, lightning begins to spark from his hand. Confused, he can't grasp what is happening until a status window suddenly appears in front of him, informing him that he has awakened and has been granted 2 new talents. The status window has now been unlocked, and it also informs him that he can use Insight, which will activate automatically. Shocked and surprised by the appearance of the status window, our boy decides to take a closer look. As he reviews the talents given to him, he notices something called Mana Pathway, but he has no idea what it means. He continues to examine the window and discovers another talent called Mind's Eye, which allows him to see detailed specifications. However, our boy is puzzled by the talent related to mana pathways, as he has never seen anything like it before. He deduces from the name that it seems to be connected to magic, but he is unsure. Confused, he recalls that the best magic talent is supposed to be Mana Companion. Yet, as he examines the status window further, he begins to trust his intuition, sensing that this new talent might be even more extraordinary than Mana Companion. Our boy thinks that Mana Pathways must be a top-tier talent, and a wave of happiness washes over him as he realizes that now, nothing will stop him. He glances at the blue bubbles again, recalling that the best magic talent was always supposed to be Mana Companion, but something deep inside tells him that this talent will be even better. As he touches one of the blue bubbles, a radiant blue light emerges from his hand. He feels a surge of power coursing through him and begins to believe that this must indeed be a top-tier ability. Clenching his fist, our boy becomes more certain. Back when he had the Mana Companion ability, he could never experience anything like this. While watching his hand transform before his eyes, he realizes that this is pure mana energy itself. If he can absorb it properly, mana will flow freely through his body, and according to his will, it will break through his limits. Our boy can feel the blue lightning coursing through his veins. He commands it to move according to his will, discovering that he can control it. Determined to break through the blockage in his mana channels, he shapes the mana into a drill, and it instantly transforms as he wishes. When he commands it to move, it obeys perfectly, flowing exactly as he directs. Overjoyed that it worked as he intended, our boy feels the mana flowing through his veins, though it's only reaching up to his elbow for now. He realizes that if he continues to gather mana and opens the path fully, he might be able to overcome the barrier of Hermimo. Feeling a surge of hope, our boy is elated. He won't die now. Meanwhile, in the territory, a maid finishes preparing lunch and wipes her hands with a towel. She remarks to herself that the meal is ready and decides to take it to Lord Kyle before it gets cold. But before she can leave, 2 other maids approach her, stopping her in her tracks. The maid, whose name is Urgel, looks at them in confusion. The 2 maids, one with green hair and the other with blue, gaze at Urgel with anger. The green-haired maid tells Urgel that they've decided to stop serving Lord Kyle for a while. The green-haired maid explains that they are protesting Kyle's behavior, saying that going hungry for a few days might improve his attitude. She demands that Urgel put the soup down immediately, and the blue-haired maid agrees with her. Urgel looks at them quietly and responds, "You can do whatever you want, but I'll still do my job." Her calm defiance angers both of them. The green-haired maid shouts at Urgel, accusing her of acting self-righteous, asking if she thinks she's the only one trying to be noble. In a fit of rage, she knocks the tray out of Urgel's hands. Urgel is shocked, but before she can react, the green-haired maid sneers, asking if she still thinks she's noble now. The maid continues to berate Urgel, reminding her that after her family's downfall, they sold her as a slave. Despite the insults, Urgel quietly kneels to pick up the fallen dishes, ignoring the green-haired maid's taunts. This silent resistance only fuels her rage. The green-haired maid, now even more furious, seething with anger, she raises her hand to slap Urgel, shouting, "Are you just going to ignore us like this?" Suddenly, someone steps in and asks, "What's going on here?" The green-haired maid turns around to see a young man standing behind her, glaring angrily. Both the green-haired and blue-haired maids are shocked. It's Sir Leonhardt. The green-haired maid is visibly scared, while the blue-haired one nervously asks why Sir Leonhardt is in the kitchen. Sir Leonhardt glances at the meal spilled on the floor and asks, "Is this meal for Lord Kyle?" Internally, he's already pieced together that these maids are giving Urgel trouble. Sternly, he informs them that the meal is already late and orders them to prepare it again, quickly. Urgel, though confused, nods in agreement and begins to collect the meal, while the green and blue-haired maids look annoyed. As Urgel leaves with the food, Sir Leonhardt watches her in silence. Meanwhile, in Kyle's room, our boy is testing his newly discovered talents, insight and mana blockage manipulation. He muses that, with these two abilities, he might actually be able to change the fate of the fallen Marquis family. Our boy reflects that he's been playing fantasy defense for 10 years, giving him knowledge almost like foresight. And now, he's been born into this world with immense power. Our boy contemplates the immense wealth and influence of the Marquis family, realizing that it's not impossible to block the forces of darkness. He looks at the status window and identifies 3 main tasks that require his focus. First, he must clear the mana channels, overcome the barrier of Hermamu, and learn magic. Since mana blockage is closely tied to magic, it makes sense for him to pursue becoming a mage rather than a knight. The second task is to prevent the downfall of the Marquis family. The better the family performs, the better his situation will be. The Celterian Marquis, with its flawed reputation and wealth, can serve as a strong shield for our boy. Additionally, because the territory is located on the outskirts, he won't have to worry about the complexities of capital politics. The final and most crucial task is to gather talented individuals. Our boy acknowledges that to prepare for the major threats posed by the dark forces in the coming years, he will utilize his insight to identify people with potential, bringing them under his influence. These individuals will become reliable allies for him. While contemplating this strategy, our boy states that by building strength, he will undoubtedly survive. Our boy feeling pleased as he reflects that to gather talent, he should start by looking nearby. Considering the Celterian Marquis family, he concludes that Leonhardt would be a good starting point, as he is a valuable tank NPC. While our boy is deep in thought, Urgel enters his room, calling out to him. She informs him that she has brought a meal. As our boy looks at her, memories of their past interactions come to mind. He wonders about her name, but can only recall the first 3 letters. Just then, his insight ability activates, revealing that the target has a low rank. Urgel's essence is probed, and her status window materializes in front of our boy. He is shocked to discover that, with the help of his insight talent, he can access information about others. Urgel's status window reveals that she possesses a talent for eternal friend of spirits in household chores. Our boy is taken aback, struggling to comprehend that the maid has such a remarkable talent, as it is a top-tier spirit summoning ability. Our boy looks at Urgel as she tells him to enjoy his meal before leaving the room. He wonders why a girl with the talent to become a genius spirit summoner is working as a maid in a place like this. The story then flashes back 1 year. At the auction house, the auctioneer gathers the attention of the gentlemen and ladies present, announcing that they have a very special item for sale, something not easily found elsewhere. He explains that they barely managed to bring her to the auction and then reveals the girl. Nervously, she stands before the crowd as the auctioneer introduces her as the 3rd daughter of the fallen Baron Helheim family. She is Urgel. The attendees are taken aback, and the auctioneer continues, stating that despite her noble lineage, she is well-mannered and intelligent. He urges the audience to place their bids. Bidding begins, with offers of 50 gold, 70 gold, and then 90 gold echoing through the hall. Sir Leonhart sits nearby and advises Lord Kyle to leave, remarking that slave auctions are not worth watching. However, Kyle interrupts the conversation by bidding 300 gold for Urgel, leaving Leonhart in shock. Leonhart urges Kyle to reconsider his decision. The auctioneer announces the bid of 300 gold and inquires if anyone is willing to bid higher. Leonhart questions Kyle, asking if he truly wants to buy a slave and wonders what his father would think about it. Angry, Kyle yells at Leonhart to stop nagging him, asserting that he will spend his money as he wishes and that his father doesn't care about his choices. Despite Leonhart's desire to intervene, Kyle begins to walk forward, and the auctioneer declares that the slave is sold for 300 gold. Kyle approaches Urgel, who stands there with her hands cuffed. He looks at her, and with a piercing gaze into her soul, he declares that she is now his. Kyle removes Urgel's cuffs and tells her that she is free now. He explains that she is no longer a slave since he has purchased her, and now she can go wherever she wishes. Urgel looks at him as he turns to leave. She stands there, contemplating her newfound freedom, but then recalls Kyle's words declaring that she belongs to him. As Kyle walks away, he notices Urgel stopping him by holding onto the cuff of his sleeve. She tells him that she will follow him. Confused, Kyle responds that she is free to do whatever she wants and continues on his way. In the present, our boy reflects on these memories while eating his lunch, realizing that they are actually Kyle's memories. He understands that the reason Urgel became a maid for the Marquis family was that Kyle took her in when she was on the verge of being sold as a slave after her family's downfall. Our boy feels a sense of empathy for Urgel, recognizing that she has endured so much at such a young age. He wonders if he has truly merged with Kyle, as he considers the emotions Kyle harbored towards Urgel. The feelings are vivid and profound. Our boy feels a shared sense of abandonment from the world, coupled with a lack of control over his fate. He takes a bite of his lunch, his eyes lighting up as he asks Urgel if she made it herself. Worried, Urgel asks with a trembling voice if something is wrong with the food. Our boy assures her that it is delicious and praises her cooking skills. He smiles and requests that she make this dish for him again next time. Urgel is taken aback, but eventually agrees with him. Our boy notices her affection for him, which shows a score of 35. He reflects on their dramatic encounter, thinking that it isn't a particularly high affection score. Given his delinquent behavior, he considers it a miracle that Urgel still holds any affection at all. Our boy recalls that in Fantasy Defense, there was no spirit mage NPC named Urgel. He suspects she must have been caught in the internal rebellion of the Marquis family and died before her talents as a spirit mage could truly blossom. Determined, our boy resolves that he will not let that happen this time. He refuses to allow such a valuable talent to slip away right before his eyes. Our boy asks Urgel if she has ever considered learning spirit magic. Urgel responds with curiosity, admitting that she knows nothing about spirit magic. Our boy explains that he believes she might have some talent for it. She remains silent, looking at him with confusion, and expresses that she has never imagined having any talent for spirit magic. Our boy realizes that it seems she has never encountered spirit magic even in her family home. He understands that spirit magic is known to be particularly expensive, likely something a lower-ranked noble family could not afford to teach her. Our boy thinks he will need to address this matter later. He encourages her to start considering it, assuring her that she will learn it soon. Urgel hesitates, and our boy insists that there is no option to refuse. He gets off the bed and stands in front of her, stating that she must follow his words. Urgel looks into his eyes, still confused. Our boy reassures her with a smile, telling her that she is his person now. To his satisfaction, he notices that her affection for him has increased to 50. A few days later, our boy, now ready as Kyle, tells Leonhart to move aside because he wants to go outside. Leonhart refuses, stating that he cannot go out. Our boy becomes angry, reminding Leonhart that he has not been outside in days and asking if he must remain locked up there forever. Leonhart insists that he cannot leave until the master grants permission, asking if Kyle has forgotten what the master had said. Our boy tries to remember and recalls that his father, while calling him a delinquent, had confined him to his room due to the trouble he caused for the Marquis of Celterion. He realizes that time is running out. Mana particles swirl in the wind, and our boy states that since discovering he could open his mana channels, he has been absorbing the mana in the room every day. However, the amount of mana available is not sufficient to open the channels all at once. Like experience points in a game, the mana accumulated in his body, gradually improving his physical condition, but it is nowhere near enough to cure Hermimu. That is why he needs to go outside and gather more mana. Our boy decides that he needs to go outside to collect more mana. He smiles and tells Leonhardt that he is not going far, just for a short walk around to get some exercise. Leonhardt is shocked to hear about the exercise. He remarks that it is the first time he has ever heard such a constructive reason from our boy. In response, our boy becomes angry and asks what Leonhardt takes him for. Leonhardt explains that after being Kyle's bodyguard for years, this is the first time he has heard him say something like this. Our boy reflects on his reputation, which has been terrible for so long, and realizes that his trust level with Leonhardt is 0. He feels disheartened, thinking that he never expected Leonhardt to be such an impenetrable wall. Our boy concludes that Leonhardt is impossible to reason with. Currently, Leonhardt serves as Kyle's bodyguard, but he is originally a very famous character from the fantasy defense game, known for his excellent skills in both defense and offense, as well as his high potential. Leonhardt could be developed into a captain-level knight, serving as a tank in parties. He is also highly popular among players due to his loyalty trait, which ensures that he would never betray them. In the original game, after the downfall of the Marquis family, Leonhardt becomes a wandering knight who can be recruited by the player. However, since the Second Son's rebellion has not occurred yet, he is still at the Celterion mansion. Our boy thinks it is a waste for such a talented person to serve as a babysitter for a delinquent like him. He wonders what the Celterion Knight Order is even doing. With a sigh, he expresses aloud his frustration about Leonhardt's presence. Upon realizing that he spoke his thoughts out loud, Leonhardt asks if our boy has a problem with him being Kyle's bodyguard. Our boy checks Leonhardt's affection level, only to find it at -60, which disappoints him. He quickly tries to cover up his thoughts, insisting that it is not what Leonhardt is thinking and that he has no issue with him. Internally, our boy reflects that Leonhardt is simply too talented for this job. Leonhardt responds that he is merely following the master's orders. Our boy understands then that Leonhardt's loyalty lies not with him, but with Master Remtun Celterion. Our boy reflects that he expected this outcome, as who would want to be loyal to a delinquent like him? However, he realizes that he cannot let that situation stand. He tells Leonhardt that he needs to convince his father. Leonhardt becomes confused, sensing that something about Kyle feels different. Our boy smiles, thinking that once he catches Leonhardt's attention, he will be his. With a smile, he asks Leonhardt if he agrees with this plan, internally noting that his second project for recruiting talent is Leonhardt. Our boy smiles and asks Leonhardt if he will help him. Leonhardt looks at him, internally noting that Kyle's attitude seems different somehow, and asks Lord Kyle what he is scheming. Our boy becomes shocked, questioning what Leonhardt means by scheming, and asks if he does not trust him at all. He explains that he has been in his room for so long that his thoughts have changed. Leonhardt is taken aback and asks if his thoughts have truly changed. Our boy smirks, stating that he has decided to live a long life. Leonhardt becomes confused, wondering why someone like Lord Kyle, who had given up on everything due to the incurable Hermimu disease, would want to live longer. Leonhardt starts to reflect on the past when Kyle's father informed him that Kyle would not live past a certain age. Not only did he lack magical talent, but he was also deficient in swordsmanship skills. Additionally, being the youngest meant he had no chance of inheriting the family legacy. Despite all these obstacles, his father wanted to keep Kyle by his side. Remtun Celterion asks Leonhardt if he resents him for making such a decision. Leonhardt remains silent, stating that it is an honor beyond words for someone in the Celterion Knight Order to protect a direct descendant of the Marquis family. He bows and pledges to fulfill his duties faithfully. Remtun Celterion expresses his confidence in Leonhardt, remarking that he is a man of loyalty. He explains that this is why he wants Leonhardt to be at Kyle's side. Rempton further emphasizes that in the vast Marquis household, there is no one else he can truly trust to protect Kyle except Leonhardt. He instructs Leonhardt to take good care of him. Leonhardt looks down, bows in respect, and assures him that he will obey the Marquis. In the present, Leonhardt remains silent while observing Kyle. Kyle tells Leonhardt that if someone wants to live longer, they need to be healthy. Therefore, he intends to exercise outside. He suggests that he can inform his father about this, assuring Leonhardt that his father will understand. Kyle smiles and asks if it is acceptable for him to go outside. As he attempts to leave, Leonhardt blocks his path and reminds him that he can also exercise indoors. Our boy becomes annoyed, thinking that Leonhardt is truly stubborn and difficult to convince. He tells Leonhardt to move aside, insisting that he doesn't want to repeat himself. Frustrated, he internally resolves that he needs to go outside to find more mana cores. They both remain silent, staring at each other, and Leonhardt reflects on the unusual aura surrounding Lord Kyle, sensing something different about him. Nevertheless, Leonhardt asserts that the Marquis's orders are absolute, which applies to him as well. He adds that if Kyle really wants to go outside, he must get past him first. Our boy is shocked, sensing the killing intent emanating from Leonhardt, realizing that the knight is using it against a child over something as simple as stepping outside. He thinks that if he were an ordinary 13-year-old, he might have wet himself in fear and collapsed on the spot. However, he is not an ordinary boy and firmly tells Leonhardt to uphold his word. Leonhardt agrees, and Kyle extends his hand, thinking that if he were just an ordinary 13-year-old, he would punch Leonhardt. A blue light emanates from his fist. Leonhardt gives Kyle a sidelong glance, and Kyle smirks as he passes by him. Kyle asks Leonhardt how it was, bragging that he managed to get past him. Once outside by the lake, he remarks on how refreshing the air feels. He lazily gulps in the fresh air and wonders how long it has been since he was last outside. Leonhardt is with him, observing quietly. Our boy reflects that even though it's just the garden near the annex, he feels a sense of freedom. He marvels at the beauty of the night sky and, more than anything, his eyes shine as he sees particles of mana everywhere. Excitedly, he thinks about devouring them all and starts running into the garden. Leonhardt stands there, confused, not expecting Kyle to be so elated just to be outside, thinking to himself that he's just a little kid. He remains silent but becomes slightly worried as he recalls the moment when Kyle passed him. He wonders how that was possible, considering that Lord Kyle has not trained in mana or aura and should not be able to handle this pressure. Our boy notices Leonhardt's confusion and thinks that it seems the knight is still rattled from what happened earlier, acknowledging that he had every reason to be shocked. Kyle was just a 13-year-old noble boy who had never been in a real fight, but mentally, he was a veteran who had survived countless virtual wars over the past 10 years in the virtual reality game Fantasy Defense. The game was famous for its realistic depictions of battle, and Kyle had become desensitized to life-or-death situations, so, when faced with a minor scare tactic like Leonard's killing intent, it felt almost second nature to him. After gathering enough mana particles, our boy thought he would be able to clear more mana channels soon. As he finished, Leonard approached him, stating that he would be receiving punishment from Rempton for his actions. Confused, our boy asked what he meant. Leonard explained that although he had followed Rempton's orders, it was wrong for him to direct killing intent toward the one he served. Therefore, he would seek punishment. Our boy assured him that it wasn't necessary, but if Leonard insisted on reporting to his father, he should also mention that Kyle didn't wish for him to be punished. True to his word, Leonhardt reported everything to Kyle's father, who was surprised by the request. Rempton asked if it was true that Kyle had requested his subordinate not be punished. Leonhardt confirmed this, stating that Kyle's words were sincere. Rempton clarified that it wasn't a matter of mistrusting Leonhardt, but rather that it was hard to believe. Leonhardt acknowledged this, admitting that even he had difficulty accepting it. He reported that when Kyle had calmly faced his killing intent, he had doubted what he was seeing. Rempton pondered, trying to understand how Kyle had resisted the killing intent of a knight as skilled as Leonhardt. He then asked what Kyle did afterward in the garden. After a moment of thought, Leonhardt recalled the cold wind and the sound of moving water as Kyle sat in the garden, focused. He responded to Rimpton that Kyle had meditated. Leonhardt slowly approached Kyle and asked if he knew how to meditate. Our boy responded that, when he was younger, his father had taught him some swordsmanship, and it was during that time that he also learned how to meditate. He then mentioned that he had quit shortly after realizing he had no talent for it. Our boy instructed Leonhardt to ensure no one disturbed him while he meditated, as it would disrupt his focus. Leonhardt acknowledged the request and later reported to Rimpton that Kyle had remained motionless in meditation for 6 hours straight. Rimpton, astonished, asked if Leonhardt had truly said 6 hours and not 6 seconds. Leonhardt confirmed, leaving Rimpton in disbelief. He recalled how, when Kyle was younger, he had tried to teach him swordsmanship. As a descendant of the family, it was expected that Kyle would also follow the path of a swordsman. Rimpton had hoped that Kyle would grow strong enough to overcome Heroman disease. However, Kyle could not handle the training, complaining that his legs felt tangled. This infuriated Rimpton, who scolded Kyle, telling him to get up. Rimpton reminded him that no weak descendant had ever come from their family. Certain that Kyle lacked both talent and determination, Rimpton had given up on the idea of him following the path of the sword. Yet now, the same Kyle had meditated for 6 hours, leaving Rimpton perplexed. He asked Leonhardt if Kyle had hit his head, or if it was even possible for someone to change so quickly. Leonhardt assured Rimpton that he had checked everything, including the food, and found nothing unusual. He admitted that Kyle had recently seemed different, not just in his determination, but even in the way he looked at him. It was clear that something had changed. Rimpton, mulling over this, decided that if Kyle was finally starting to mature, it wasn't a bad thing. He instructed Leonhardt to continue observing our boy, and Leonhardt agreed. Meanwhile, back in his room, our boy was gathering mana from the air around him. As the mana collected in his hand, he began channeling it into his body, enhancing his perception skills. His sharpened senses allowed him to assess the condition of his body accurately, feeling the mana coursing through him. He decided to attempt channeling mana all the way to his heart. The mana flowed through his arm, up his shoulder, crawled along his spine, and finally reached his heart. Our boy clenched his teeth in pain but felt a wave of relief when the system indicated that the path to his heart had been cleared. The blocked channel trait was weakening for the first time. He could now feel mana flowing through his entire body. Overjoyed, our boy realized he had successfully gathered external mana and cleared the channels leading to his heart. This meant he could now use magic. Determined, he clenched his fist and resolved to begin serious magic training. In that world, using magic required forming a mana circle near the heart. The higher the level of magic one wished to use, the more circles needed to be formed. Creating multiple circles took time, which is why those aspiring to be mages typically began their training early, usually between the ages of 5 and 8. By age 12, they should have formed their first circle to be considered suitable for the path of a mage by societal standards. Kyle, at 13, was a bit late to start learning magic. However, that was when he had been an ordinary NPC. Now, staring at his status window, our boy knew his situation was different. With the mana pathway's talent and his mana channels cleared to the heart, he was finally in a state to learn magic. All he needed to do now was form his first mana circle. He pondered how to create it, wondering if he should attempt the method he had learned in the game. Suddenly, there was a knock. It is Leon who informs Kyle that his father has lifted the restrictions. Kyle is delighted to hear this. Leon further explains that the restriction is lifted on the condition that he accompanies Kyle. This allows Kyle to leave his room and walk around the garden, but Leon clarifies that he still cannot leave the mansion. Kyle happily responds that this is fine, thinking to himself that being allowed in the garden is a good enough start. He also believes that Leonhardt must have spoken favorably to the Marquis on his behalf. As expected, Kyle knew it was a wise decision to win Leon over first. However, he wonders how his favorability score improved by 30 points, considering it was -50 in likability when Leon first dismissed his hostility. Could Leon have been moved by watching him meditate all night? Remembering how exhausted he was after meditating for 6 hours, he wondered if Leonhardt was the type to be inspired by sweat and effort, much like in sports. With an idea in mind, he told Leonhardt it was perfect timing because there was somewhere they needed to go together. When Leonhardt asked where they were going, our boy simply replied that he would find out if he followed. They arrived at the library, and the librarian was horrified to see him. He greeted her, but she immediately questioned how he had gotten there and rushed to Leonhardt for an explanation. She reminded him that Kyle was forbidden from entering the library. Leonhardt informed her that Rimpton had lifted the restriction, which shocked the librarian even more. Tearfully, she recalled how Kyle had previously thrown books on the floor and torn them to pieces. She had begged him not to destroy the rare books she had obtained after traveling all over the Empire, but he had dismissed her pleas, stating that they were just papers she wouldn't be able to read once she was dead. He then proceeded to tear them up and throw them away, leaving her in tears. She reminded Leonhardt that, after that incident, Kyle had been banned from the library again. Clearing his throat to get their attention, our boy told the librarian that he had come to read books and asked if there were any related to magic. They both looked at him in confusion. She replied that, while the collection was limited, they did have some introductory level books for beginners, as the Duke's family had always emphasized swordsmanship over magic. He said that would be sufficient and requested a book explaining how to form mana circles. A moment later, he began reading about mana as the force that created everything, a form of supernatural urgal energy. The text also mentioned that supernatural urgal energy was a term defined by the scholar Joshua Allengrang, associated with his birth story. Frustrated, our boy questioned whether this was truly an introductory book and why it was so complicated. Exhausted, he laid down, doubting that 7-year-olds could understand such material and thinking it resembled a university thesis. He wondered if he had to read all of it, reminiscing about how, in a game, a status window would appear and the knowledge would be automatically learned. Just then, the status window appeared, showing that his insight skill had been activated. Surprised, he watched as his insight skill began translating the low-level book's text. Once the entire book was translated, a loading process appeared. When it reached 100%, the translation of Introductory Book 1 was complete. Amazed, our boy realized that the insight skill could also function as a translator. After glancing at the books next to him, our boy decided there was no need to linger in the library any longer. He called out to the librarian, Alice, and instructed her to bring him more introductory books on circle formation, informing her that he would be borrowing all of them. Back in his room, Leonhardt placed the books on the table and reported that this was the last batch of all the books our boy had requested. Pleased, our boy complimented Leonhardt on carrying them so efficiently. Excitedly, he eagerly scanned the books, prompting Leonhardt to ask if he was sure about borrowing so many at once. Confused, our boy asked Leonhardt what he meant. Leonhardt explained that the librarian, Alice, had been very concerned. She had begged him to ensure the safe return of the borrowed books, as they were rare volumes, irreplaceable even if she sold her entire estate. Our boy reassured Leonhardt not to worry, confidently stating that he would finish reading the books in no time. He jokingly asked if they were concerned he might burn them. Leonhardt, remembering how Kyle used to despise reading, wondered aloud about his sudden interest. His curiosity deepened as he noticed the books were about mana usage and the basics of circle formation. Surprised, Leonhardt reminded our boy that Herm-Imu's disease blocked the body's channels, preventing mana and aura from flowing through it. Before Leonhardt could finish, our boy cut him off, saying that learning magic would indeed be difficult for him and asking if that was what Leonhardt had intended to say. Leonhardt apologized for overstepping, but our boy assured him that he was correct. He acknowledged that everyone in the household likely thought the same and that what he was doing must seem strange to them. This caught Leonhardt off guard. Our boy then clarified that, as the infamous disowned youngest son, no one would be surprised if he acted oddly once or twice more. He added that reading wouldn't harm anyone, and he understood why Leonhardt was concerned, worried that another failure might send Kyle into deeper despair. However, our boy reminded him that, as he had said before, he didn't intend to die young. With a light punch on Leonhardt's shoulder, our boy swore he would do everything in his power to succeed. He then headed to his bed, announcing it was time to lie down and read some more, leaving Leonhardt in stunned surprise. Leonhardt watched as our boy lay down, picked up a book, and smiled happily. This triggered a memory of Kyle Saltirian, a boy Leonhardt had once known, crying in the training hall and calling out for his father. Leonhardt had approached him, concerned, and asked why he was crying. Tearfully, our boy had replied that his father had told him he didn't need someone like him. Leonhardt had tried to console him, worried about his fragile state. As Leonhardt picked up one of the books, he reflected on how Kyle, once a tearful child, was now slowly changing. He then glanced at his status window and was shocked to see Kyle's favorability score toward him had increased to 0, no longer the -30 it had been moments ago. Puzzled, Leonhardt wondered what had caused such a sudden jump of 30 points in Kyle's favorability. He placed the book on the bed and told Kyle that he would be waiting outside if he needed anything. Caught off guard, Kyle stuttered a reply of acknowledgement. Smiling, Leonhardt left the room, leaving Kyle to wonder if his reading had caused the shift in favorability. He questioned why there had been no change in the library and speculated whether Leonhardt had a fondness for persistence. Kyle considered that devouring so many books at once might have been seen as persistence in Leonhardt's eyes. With a quiet laugh, he concluded that Leonhardt was indeed a strange guy, while Leonhardt, outside the room, walked away smiling. Our boy felt a wave of relief. Finally, he was alone, surrounded by books. He sat down and decided it was time to truly dive into his studies. Activating his insight skill, he began decoding the text in the books. To his amazement, the book started translating and processing at an incredible speed. He noticed that insight worked dozens of times faster than normal reading, even with the most difficult parts of the text being stored as easily understandable data. The system then notified him that the principles of circle formation had been digitized and saved. His understanding had increased, and all the books in his vicinity had been fully decoded. Excited and pleased with the ease of the process, our boy clicked on the principles of circle formation to move to the next step. As he began forming a circle using the decoded data, the system confirmed that he had understood the principles of circle formation and met the minimum requirements to create his first circle. Staring at the golden circle in front of him, our boy knew that by directing mana along the golden path, he could form the circle by pushing the golden path toward his heart. He commanded it to move inside him. The force of the golden path entering his body caused the book data around him to fly, and the system indicated that the mana was following the path within him. He felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if his heart were burning, yet he knew he had to endure. Otherwise, the mana would backfire and damage his organs. The magic circle began to form in his heart as he pushed through the pain, constantly telling himself to hold on for just a little longer. When the golden path finally began to disappear, leaving behind a completed magic circle, with the golden path vanished, a perfect magic circle formed inside his heart. The pain subsided, and our boy opened his eyes, wondering if he had succeeded. The system confirmed that he had formed his first circle, weakening his blocked channels and intensifying his mana pathways. He could now store refined mana within the circle. Overjoyed, our boy stood up, shouting in triumph that he had done it. However, his celebration was cut short as a wave of dizziness hit him. He noticed the bright light outside his window, realizing that it was already morning. Just before losing consciousness, our boy thought to himself that Leonhardt and Urgel were going to scold him for this, and then he collapsed to the floor. A short while later, Urgel entered the room, bringing his breakfast, and gasped in shock when she saw him lying on the ground, surrounded by books. She rushed to him in worry, shouting to ask why he was on the floor and what was with all the books in just one night. Our boy had successfully used all the mana he had accumulated to form his first circle. A new chapter in his life as Celtirian, the official mage, had begun. Later that day, Alice was horrified when she saw the mess the books were in as Leonhardt returned them. However, Leonhardt comforted her, saying that at least none of the books were damaged. Days later, in the kitchen, Urgel carefully prepared our boy's meal as she placed the garnish on top, smiling as she remembered his reaction to the last meal she brought him and how he had praised it as incredibly delicious, just as she had expected. Grabbing the tray, she turned to deliver the food to our boy. However, a group of maids blocked her path, asking if the food was meant for Kyle. She confirmed that it was. The green-haired maid stepped forward and told Urgel that they would deliver it for her, so she could rest. Urgel became confused and asked what she was suddenly talking about. The green-haired maid reminded her that serving Kyle was Sally's responsibility and that Urgel was just a temporary replacement. Sally chimed in, mentioning that Kyle's personality had improved recently, and they were suggesting a return to the original arrangement. Urgel stared at them for a moment before replying that she didn't want to end things. If they had complaints about their work or wanted to change it, they should take it up with our boy directly. Furiously, the green-haired maid shouted at Urgel, ordering her to stop. But Urgel kept walking. Before she could leave the kitchen, another maid entered, staring at her. The tension grew as the green-haired maid continued shouting, asking if Urgel thought she was special. Urgel ignored them and left. Upon arriving at Kyle's room, she smiled as she watched him enjoy the meal she had prepared. She asked if the food suited his taste and mentioned that she had adapted the recipe he had taught her last time. Our boy complimented her cooking, telling her that her skills improved day by day. Shyly, Urgel admitted that she had been practicing hard every day and had even learned a few new recipes from the head chef. Our boy praised her diligence and hard work. After finishing his meal, he put down his utensils and asked about her progress with spirit magic, making her visibly worried. He ordered her to bring the introductory book on spirit magic he had given her, which she quickly fetched. Opening the book, he asked how far she had read, and she replied that she was about halfway through. When our boy examined the book, he was surprised to see the worn pages and detailed notes. Realizing that Urgel had been studying diligently, he understood that, coming from a noble family, she had a solid basic education, so her learning speed wasn't slow. He also considered that, given her age, she was quite talented, and it would be ideal to build her skills gradually over time. However, our boy sighed and told her that at her current pace, it wouldn't be enough, which left her surprised. He knew they didn't have the luxury of time. In 2 months, the Seltian family would hold the heir succession ceremony, and on that day, the coup led by the second son, Adele, would take place. The Marquis family would fall, and Urgel, caught in the chaos, would lose her life. Our boy understood that she had to become stronger before then. He told Urgel that, for now, she should leave the cooking to someone else and focus solely on her studies. He explained that this would help her concentrate better, and he would have Sally take over serving him again, so she shouldn't worry. To his surprise, Urgel clenched her fists and shouted, "No!" in disagreement. Startled, our boy called her name in confusion. Stuttering, she swore that she would work hard, continue studying spirit magic, and keep cooking without neglecting either. Tearfully, she begged him not to let someone else serve him, pleading to keep her duties. Her sincere gaze, filled with tears, left our boy stunned. In that moment, he understood something deeper. Urgel had lost everything when her family collapsed. She had gone from being the daughter of a baronet to a slave and now a maid. She had lost contact with her family and didn't even know if they were alive. It was only natural that Urgel felt insecure. Just as she had started adjusting to life as a maid and finding some stability, he had suddenly pushed her to prioritize studying spirit magic. Of course, she would be confused. Being a maid had given her a sense of purpose and security, which was why it had taken precedence over her magic studies. Our boy realized that Urgel must have feared that if she couldn't perform her duties as a maid properly, she might be kicked out of the mansion. He understood that it was his fault for not explaining the situation clearly. He gently asked her if she remembered what he had said when he brought her to the mansion. He reassured her that he never abandoned his people and always protected them, which made her stop crying in surprise. Our boy softly told her that he didn't ask her to learn spirit magic without reason. She was an excellent maid. Her cooking skills were outstanding, and she was diligent and meticulous. If she continued to work hard, she could be promoted to head maid. However, he reminded her that there were plenty of other maids in the mansion, meaning many could replace her in that role. In a panic, Urgel called out to him, but our boy calmly asked her to consider what would happen if she became a spirit mage. He explained how rare and respected skilled spirit mages were. He told her that she would become a great person, the greatest spirit mage, and that everyone would look up to her. She would stand tall above everyone else, and no one in the world would be able to replace her. Our boy then asked how that sounded, remarking that it was amazing. But Urgel still hesitated, Worried, she asked if she could really do it. Our boy confidently reassured her, telling her that she absolutely could. Handing the book back to her, he reiterated that she could become the greatest spirit mage and that he believed in her. Urgel, happy and encouraged, accepted the book, replying that she would work hard because she trusted him. And the system notified Kyle that her affection for him had increased by 60. Surprised by her response, he gladly encouraged her, feeling content with her trust. Afterward, our boy officially appointed Urgel as his personal maid, entrusting her with most of his personal affairs to ensure she could study and work in peace. He moved her out of the shared maid quarters and gave her a private room. When he showed her the room, she was amazed. He knew it was not only better for her studies, but also beneficial for his security. Additionally, this way, she wouldn't have to worry about clashing with the other maids. Urgel expressed how much she loved the room, especially because it was so close to his, which left Kyle stunned for a moment. He asked if that was what she liked most about it, thinking she might be quite attached to it, to which she happily agreed. Kyle then sincerely told her that they should work hard together and survive, no matter what. Later, while Urgel was in the library, she noticed someone walking outside. She looked out of the window and saw Kyle walking with Leonhardt. Kyle waved at her, and although she was surprised for a moment, she smiled warmly at him. The system indicated that her affection for him had increased by 65. Meanwhile, at the main mansion, a maid approached the second lord, Adolf Celterion, asking for a moment of his time to deliver a report. After hearing what she had to say, Adolf became interested. He asked if she was saying that Kyle had changed, to which the maid confirmed. She further reported that Kyle had recently been exercising and building his strength, as well as dedicating significant time to studying magic. Kyle's personality had also improved. He no longer lashed out or hit the servants in anger. Astonished that his foolish younger brother seemed to have matured, Adolf remarked that as the second brother, he supposed it was time to pay Kyle a visit. After waving back to Urgel, Kyle continued walking with Leonhardt. He ordered Leonhardt to take him to a large open space somewhere out of sight. Curious, Leonhardt asked what he was planning, to which Kyle replied that he wanted to conduct a magic experiment. This surprised Leonhardt, who confusedly asked what he meant by a magic experiment. A short while later, they arrived at the outermost part of the estate. Leonhardt informed him that the area was secluded, surrounded by dense trees, and not visible from the mansion. Kyle responded that it was perfect and instructed Leonhardt to ensure no one came near. Leonhardt acknowledged the order, leaning against a nearby tree and silently observing. He couldn't help but think that, due to Herm's disease, Kyle shouldn't be able to master swordsmanship or magic. A few days of reading magic books shouldn't have changed that, but with the current Kyle, Leonhardt felt it just might be possible. Our boy gathered magical power in his hand and released it in the form of a magic missile. The missile shot toward a tree, piercing straight through it. Both Kyle and Leonhardt were shocked as the tree cracked in half and collapsed with a loud crash. Kyle, stunned by the noise, quickly asked Leonhardt if the sound could have been heard inside the mansion. Leonhardt reassured him, explaining that he had used his aura to suppress the explosion, ensuring that the sound of the tree falling wouldn't have been heard either. Our boy sighed in relief and complimented Leonhardt on his quick reflexes. However, Leonhardt, still in shock, asked when our boy had formed a circle. Kyle replied that it hadn't been long and that he had simply followed the instructions from the book he borrowed from the library, and it worked. Leonhardt, even more surprised, asked if that meant Kyle was now cured. Kyle confidently confirmed that he had overcome Herm's disease, releasing his magic in his palm as he spoke. Leonhardt stared at Kyle, recalling his earlier words about not planning to die young and doing everything he could to survive. It all made sense now. Smiling, Leonhardt congratulated him on surpassing his disease. The system then notified Kyle that Leonhardt's favorability toward him had increased by 10, making him realize that Leonhardt was truly a man of perseverance. Leonhardt explained that Magic Missile was typically a first circle spell, usually possessing the strength of a punch from an adult male. However, the power Kyle had displayed was far beyond that of a typical first circle spell, as evidenced by the destroyed tree. Kyle agreed, adding that the power he felt was more akin to a fourth circle spell, even though he was still technically a first circle mage. He assured Leonhardt that despite his current rank, he had just unleashed a fourth circle level of power with a first circle spell. Leonhardt marveled at how incredible that was. Kyle admitted that even he hadn't expected such strength. Leaving Leonhardt to wonder if he was some kind of prodigy, Kyle remarked that regardless of how they looked at it, such power was too conspicuous. Grateful for his insight and talent, he reflected on how he had managed to read all the first circle magic books in the library thanks to it. Without this insight, it would have taken him months just to form a circle. However, one question lingered in his mind. Why was the magic usage decoded by insight different from that in the game? He remembered that, according to the magic books, casting spells involved drawing a complex magic circle, followed by intricate calculations and equations, before circulating mana to activate the spell, a very old-school method. In contrast, in the game, magic casting was much simpler. Players only needed to draw a basic magic symbol with mana, and the spell would activate immediately. This method was easier, faster, and more powerful. Kyle decided to try using magic in a more user-friendly way, similar to the game. However, the power he unleashed was overwhelming. He knew this was a problem, as it wasn't the right time to reveal his full strength yet. Kyle asked Leonhardt if he could keep what he had just revealed a secret. Taken aback, Leonhardt inquired if he meant keeping it from his father as well. With a soft smile, Kyle replied in the affirmative and playfully suggested they keep it between themselves. To his shock, the system immediately indicated that Leonhardt's favorability had decreased. Kyle couldn't believe he was losing favor just for that and wondered if his tone had been that off-putting. He explained that there was a reason for his secrecy. He didn't want anyone to know how strong he was just yet. Leonhardt, still puzzled, asked why. Kyle revealed that it was due to the upcoming succession ceremony in 2 months. This revelation startled Leonhardt. Kyle then asked if he was aware of the event. The succession ceremony of the Marquis of Sutyan family was a traditional competition to determine the heir, based not on age, but on merit. The family judged candidates based on personality, swordsmanship, wisdom, knowledge, public support, and the opinions of loyal followers. The goal was to select the most promising heir capable of leading the family to greater prosperity. Currently, 2 individuals were fiercely competing for the position of heir. The eldest son, Abel Celterion, and the second son, Adolf Celterion. Abel, the eldest son of the Marquis's legitimate wife, was the most likely candidate, known for his gentle nature and exceptional swordsmanship skills. He had been groomed to be the heir since childhood, growing up under high expectations as a model elite, primarily supported by the family's long-serving retainers. On the other hand, Adolf, also born of a legitimate wife, had long been overshadowed by his elder brother and overlooked for many years. However, as he matured, Adolf's personality became more composed, and his swordsmanship skills improved rapidly, allowing him to stand out. His supporters were primarily young, passionate knights. The scene shifts to the main palace, where Adolf and Abel meet with their supporters. Adolf asks Abel if he's been ignoring his younger brother. Abel, smiling, replies that it has been a while. He further explains that he was so lost in thought, he didn't even notice Adolf approaching. Frustrated, Adolf tells Abel to stop joking, as it's hard to believe that Abel, who manifested an aura at the age of 5, couldn't sense someone's presence. Abel responds, saying that was a story from ages ago and wasn't a big deal. It had been a childhood fluke, nothing worth bragging about. He then tells Adolf that he is embarrassed, and Adolf shouldn't bring it up again, or people will laugh at him since it's not worth mentioning. Abel notes that Adolf was the one who first manifested an aura at the age of 15. One of Abel's subordinates then remarks that his son had a similar experience, and he had worried that his son was slow and lacked talent. Abel reassures him, saying that some people start slowly, but now that his son has taken that difficult first step, he will grow quickly, Abel added. Angered by this, one of Adolf's subordinates told Abel's men to stop talking nonsense. However, Adolf, with a serious gaze, intervened and told his subordinate to stop. He reminded them that they were in the main house, where their father resided, and that they shouldn't act recklessly. His subordinates quickly apologized to Adolf. Observing this, Abel commented that Adolf had trained his subordinates well, further stating that Adolf was truly worthy of being a candidate for the heir of the Marquis of Celtirion. Hearing this, Adolf responded, "Laugh all you want," and as he stepped closer to Abel added, "You won't be laughing for much longer." As Adolf left with his men, Abel couldn't help but dwell on what Adolf had just said.